The Jura region of eastern France is the appetizer of a three-day extravaganza in the mountains, culminating in a weekend in the high Alps. Not surprisingly, Bradley Wiggins is put under pressure in the early slopes by his Aussie rival, Cadel Evans. Yesterday, Bradley Wiggins confirmed his place as the leading challenger to Cadel Evans at this summer's Tour de France. The 32-year-old rider scorched the 33-mile time trial course and almost caught the 2011 Tour de France winner, Cadel Evans, en route to a dominating stage victory.
A great, storming, dominating ride by Bradley Wiggins.
Andy Schleck's problems went from bad to worse as he crashed badly in the time trial. But he will look for some redemption over the next 3 days in the mountains. Now it's time for Bradley Wiggins to defend his yellow jersey. We're into the mountains next. The Epic Cycle Series presented by Mikel Ultra moves into the Jura Mountains today. A very tough start to 3 days of passes in the Criterium du Dauphine. The 3 days when anybody who wants to win this bike race will have to come out and play. The stage from Saint-Trivier-sur-Moignans to Rumilly is 116 miles long, but a very testing course. Hello everybody, I'm Paul Show, and alongside me is Bob Roll. Bob, that was a dominant performance by Bradley Wiggins in the time trial yesterday, but today it's a different story.
Different story. Bradley Wiggins set the table. Who will dine and who will starve? It's up to the mountains to decide. We have a very tough mountainous stage on today's stage, but Team Sky, they came to this race with their A squad, and they all rode very well. Mick Rogers, third in the time trial, and sits third in the overall standings as well. He is the teammate of Bradley Wiggins.
Yes, but look at that, in 5th place overall, looking for 1 minute and 44 seconds. I'm pretty certain that Cadel Evans would not have been expecting that at the start of yesterday's individual time trial. But today is a different kind of course, Bob.
Very tough stage in the mountains to the finish town of Rumilly. There is a beyond category climb, Le Grand Colombier, midway through the stage. That will be featured also in the Tour de France. An almost identical race route will be on stage number 10 this July in the Tour, and it's a testing route for the riders in today's Dauphine stage.
No, very important, I think, Bob, for a lot of the riders who will go on to the Tour de France. This climb, in fact, has not been used in the Dauphiné since 1988, and the winner on that occasion, of course, was Charlie Motte. Earlier on today, though, there was a little bit of drama out on the course, because if you look at the group at the front there with the red-black jerseys, that is Cadel Evans. He put the hammer down, Bob, actually on the descent, and caused a gap between himself and Bradley Wiggins.
TJ Van Gardner, the young American on the BMC squad, putting in a big attack here on the descent with two teammates, Cadel Evans being the foremost 5th overall. But watch this from the peloton in the yellow jersey.
That is domination. That is showing a little bit of character there. Bradley Wiggins sees the gap at about 15 to 20 seconds. His teammates have helped him to perfection. He leaps across the gap and says, hello guys, I'm back in this bike race.
Well, that will neutralize the little attack there by the teammates of Cadel Evans. When you have the race leader on your wheel, well, that's the end of the story.
It certainly is, but as we rejoin the action now at 34 kilometers to go, this is one lone survivor looking over his shoulders to see just exactly what is happening behind. Here we've got a group with Bradley Wiggins. 41 seconds it is to the leader, and this is a very select group. Jürgen van den Broek is in here, Vincenzo Nibali on the far side. Looking a little bit worse for wear after the hard days had in the saddle there, Bradley Wiggins.
Michael Rogers, his teammate, Edvald Boasson-Hagen, also in this group. So Sky, they continue to do well. They continue to dominate the proceedings, but they've been put under a tremendous amount of pressure in the mountains of today's stage. Ideally, you want to have as many teammates as you can have around your race leader. And look at Brad Wiggins. He's on the left-hand side of the peloton there, just around the front, but a very small group, and not many Sky riders left at this point.
Well, there's a little bit of a confusion here. This is Luis Leon Sanchez with the lime green glasses at the front for Team Rabobank. He's a good bike rider. All of these guys, I think, taking serious note of today's stage, because it's almost exactly the same stage as stage 10 in the Tour de France, which starts in Macon, goes all the way to Bellegarde, which is why I think these riders want to learn this climb that they've gone over today, Le Grand Colombier.
Menderel, that was the leader on the road. He was in an early breakaway back back to the peloton here. That looks like Christophe Cairn, the rider from the Europe Car Squad, stage winner last year, and also 6th overall in the Dauphiné.
Well, it's rather interesting here, Bob, because there's nobody actually controlling the race. Up in the early part of the race, all of the control was done by Team Sky, and now they seem to be losing their grip a bit.
They have been losing the grip a little bit because of the attack from the BMC squad on the descent of the Grand Colombier. It looked like Bradley Wiggins himself had to get across, realizing the danger there. Very grippy stage so far. Bradley Wiggins starting to wonder where his teammates are. They've dominated the Dauphiné so far, but today they don't seem to have the same number of riders in the front to control the proceedings. Michael Roger is there and Chris Froome as well, but where are the rest of the guys?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Bob, we don't often talk about the Jura Mountains. They may not be the high mountains of the Alps or the Pyrenees, but they are a tough range of mountains to come through on a bike.
Yes, indeed. Mandarel just going through the screen there. Here's the remnants of the breakaway that got away early. Some of the names in there: Vicho, Di Gregorio, Martinez Losada, Gindebos, and Jose Sarmiento, the Colombian rider on the Liquigas squad. He's the man in the green jersey there. He's been out on the attack for the King of the Mountain points.
Well, in fact, he's garnered enough points on the day, Bob, to be the new leader of the King of the Mountains classification by the end of the day. He went over the Grand Colombier in first place and the Col de Richemont in first place as well. The early breakaway was 10 riders initially, but every team was trying to get into that breakaway because the first hour of racing, Bob, was run off at 30 miles an hour. The average speed for the race so far, 28 miles an hour, which is pretty amazing when you think of the mountains we've already been over.
And that will increase as we get towards the finishing town of Rumilly. That was Luis Leon Sanchez, the Raboback man in orange, that just went through, making a big attack here and putting Bradley Wiggins under further pressure. What we don't see is the Sky team on the front dictating the tempo in the peloton. We've got a couple of guys. That's Richie Porte, the teammate that just went through your screen, and that's the race leader, Bradley Wiggins. Big pressure now on our race leader, who has absolutely dominated the Dauphiné so far, but that might not be the case at the end of today.
Well, he doesn't look like he's under pressure himself physically, Bob, but yes, the team seem to have lost a little bit of the grip of the control, but they've got to conserve their energy, Team Sky, because we're facing up to the next 2 days in the high Alps, serious Tour de France type climbs, like of course the Joux-Plane, which is a scary climb with a descent, and then a mountain top finish on Sunday.
Well, the Joux-Plane has been the undoing of many a Tour contender in the past. It'll be very interesting to see how Team Sky handles the next 2 days in the mountains. It looks as if Cadel Evans has come to the mountains ready to go on the offensive. He put in a big attack on the descent of the Col de Colombier, and I'm sure those will continue throughout the week's racing.
Well, as we look at these riders, the remnants, the survivors of that early morning breakaway, now down to just 9 riders. Their advantage is 46 seconds, but the big question is, will the battle between Bradley Wiggins and Cadel Evans continue today? Heading back into the Jura, the race actually finishes in the High Alps. That's where we'll be going this weekend. This is Tony Martin here, making his way back through the convoy of cars. We've not heard anything at all on race radio, but Bob, I can only assume that what's happened to him is he's had a mechanical problem. He doesn't seem to be in any panic at all. He's in second place in the overall standings. He's an excellent individual time trialist. In fact, he's the current world time trialing champion, and he's got sights looking forward on the Olympic Games. So today, he's our Michelob Ultra athlete profile.
Tony Martin, the preeminent time trialist of the sport of cycling, took that crown away from Fabian Cancellara on last year's season. He was absolutely dominant there. He was good yesterday. He was 34 seconds slower than Bradley Wiggins. Bradley Wiggins tellingly said his best feelings, his best emotions from yesterday was beating the world champion Tony Martin in the time trial and keeping the yellow jersey. But I think he was more impressed to beat Tony Martin, which very few riders can say in the last few years of bike racing.
Well, this is the second group on the road now. This is Luis Leon Sanchez trying to look for the move here. He's a very canny bike rider, the sort of move that could succeed if Luis Leon Sanchez gets some cooperation with the other riders in the group with him, Bob. The 9 riders at the front end of the bike race. There's some good riders in there. Fofanov is in there for Astana. Sarmiento is in there for Liquigas. If this group gets across the gap now, we could be seeing a very big change in the Criterium to Dauphiné this afternoon.
Well, Luis Leon Sanchez starts the day in 9th place in the overall standings, just over 2 minutes behind Bradley Wiggins. So Sky will have to pay attention to this attack if they are able to. That's the question. It looks like they've regrouped towards the front now of this peloton in the run into the final town. 51 seconds as the gap to this group here from the leaders, Bradley Wiggins, but he does have 3 teammates now with him for the last part of the race.
I think it's because of the presence of that in that move of Luis Leon Sanchez. He's the rider in the orange and blue jersey of Team Rabobank. He's a great bike rider. I've always expected big things to come from this Spanish rider, who is the Spanish time trial champion, and I think that's why all of a sudden Team Sky have taken a serious interest in this move.
Well, maybe Luis Leon Sanchez is figuring that because he's 2+ minutes behind, this guy won't chase that hard. He'll have a chance for the stage win. He's only a few seconds ahead of this big peloton that are chasing the 2 groups now. One group of 9 in the front, the Luis Leon Sanchez group, and here is the peloton led and under the control of the Sky team. They do not want to give Luis Leon Sanchez too much of a rope to get away, but if he can catch the front group, he has a chance at the stage win. He's become a very canny bike racer. Like you said, he's got 3 stage wins so far this year. One in Paris-Nice, very similar situation, in the hills, little breakaway, dusted everybody except Jens Voigt, then beat him in the sprint, and also 2 stages in the Tour of Romandie that take place in the very same region of France.
Well, 25 kilometers to go is the official distance for that leading group of riders, and Sanchez looking over his shoulder there to try and get some cooperation for the other riders in this group. And you know, the main field that seemed to be slipping a little bit further back, it's 53 seconds now. They really need to get themselves organized if they want to pull back Sanchez and the rest of the group. But Sanchez, Bob, in 9th position overall at the start of the day, is still looking for more than 2 minutes on Bradley Wiggins.
2 minutes and 2 seconds. That's Tiago Machado from Radio Shack's second wheel. A very good campaigner from Portugal. He's on the team of Andy Schleck. Andy Schleck having a very tough Dauphiné so far. Looked to be showing signs of life the day before the time trial, but in the time trial, the first time check, he was doing quite well within about a minute of Luke Durbridge, who was the current leader at that time, but then disaster struck. He was actually blown off of his bike by the heavy-duty winds that were blowing across the time trial yesterday. We did see how windy it was throughout the day.
Well, this is Richie Port, who's being called to the front for Team Sky to do a lot of the pacemaking. In fact, Luke Durbridge, one of the riders, didn't start this morning, Bob. The doctor pulled him out of the race because he was starting to suffer from an Achilles tendon problem, and they didn't want that to go anywhere worse, leading up to a possible selection for the Olympic Games in the individual time trial. 3 other riders not starting as well. Geschke on Seb Rosselaar and Sepp van Mark not coming out. As we look here at the Tête de la Course, they're getting pretty frisky, these guys, Bob. And, you know, there's no proper organisation, but you can see the speed. The man at the back there in the red, that's Remy de Gregorio, a former winner of the King of the Mountains, by the way, in the Dauphiné.
And a stage winner of Paris-Nice last year. That's Egoy Martinez, who was in the breaks the day before the time trial stage. So he's back in the front group as well.
Yeah, Daniel Navarro is the rider in the pale blue jersey of Saxo Bank. But watch out for that rider there in the lime green jersey of Team Liquigas Cannondale. He is a youngster from Colombia. He's a very, very good climber. He won the Baby Giro, the amateur version of the Giro d'Italia a couple of years ago. Started the year off badly with a broken collarbone in the crash in San Luis in Argentina, and then had to have an operation. He reckons he's going to be a lot better towards the end of the year, and he's aiming for the Vuelta a España.
Sarmiento, he is a King of the Mountains leader currently. He comes from a new generation of great Colombian cyclists. 2 Colombians won the Dauphiné back in the 80s, Martin Ramirez and Luis Herrera. So quite a pedigree for the Colombian athletes in this particular stage race, the Criterium du Dauphiné.
Well, once again, as it was just on the day before the individual time trial, is Team Sky coming to the front in 3rd position in that line there. You've got Michael Rogers now. Michael Rogers, former 3-time world time trial champion, riding what I reckon was one of his best time trial performances in a number of years yesterday. Team Sky under pressure, or are they? Tomorrow, the Epic Cycle Series, presented by Michelob Ultra, continues with Stage 6 of the Criterium du Dauphiné, and it's into the high Alps with a dramatic finish. Tomorrow at 11:30 p.m. Eastern Time on the NBC Sports Network. Well, Bob, there's some organisation going on here. You know, you have to think that Team Sky have brought their A-team here to the Criterium du Dauphiné. And it's still, I find, rather strange that the man who's doing all of this pacemaking on the front, Richie Port from Australia, is not yet selected for the Tour de France team. They won't make that final decision until the 20th of June, according to Sean Yates, the team manager.
Danny Navarro, Saxo Bank in the dark blue and black shorts there, just rotating around the front, teammates with Alberto Contador. Good news for all the riders on the Saxo Bank squad. It looks as if that squad might be in trouble of vanishing from the sport, but Contador signed a 3-year contract. He'll be with the boys in the dark blue from Saxo Bank for at least another 3 years through 2015. And Bjarne Riis has a good program going, and it looks like it will continue now.
Well, this man here in the Astana jersey, the turquoise colour, that's Dimitri Fofanov. These guys are hammering along here. That's Egoy Martinez in the orange jersey. Somebody's popping off the front here. It looks like a Cofidis jersey, so that must mean it's Remy de Gregorio.
Remy de Gregorio, he won a stage in Paris-Nice, very similar to this, with a late attack and a solo streak to the line. Let's see if the other riders will chase him. Maybe not content with the tempo in the breakaway, understanding that they will probably get caught unless they go a little bit faster. Now they're starting to increase their advantage, though. 56 seconds to the group of Bradley Wiggins.
Well, Remy de Gregorio is a gangly style. He's a very tall bike rider, by the way. He runs in at 6'5", but he's very slightly built, and he's a great climber. He's trying to slip away from these guys, but they're all being attentive, aren't they?
They have brought him back into the fold. This is the chasing group led by Luis Leon Sanchez. You can see them just at the top of your screen. There's the peloton. No cars in between the gaps, so the gap's still very close. 12 miles left in the bike race, 1 minute advantage for the men in the front and one big group in between. Very exciting stage. Team Sky rotating through the front. Richie Port's been on the front for the last 10 kilometers or 6 miles. Great riding by the young Australian teammate of the race leader, Bradley Wiggins.
Well, Richie Port, by the way, Bob, was 7th overall in the Giro d'Italia a couple of years ago and the best young rider. But yes, they are riding a very hard and solid race. And I'm getting information coming in, Bob, that in fact two big names missing from the yellow jersey group. Alexander Vinokourov is not there. Neither is Andy Schleck.
Andy Schleck continues to struggle in this year's Dauphine. The war of words in the Radio Shack camp between Johan Brunel and the Schleck brothers seems to have cooled off a little bit. Andy Schleck doing a decent opening part of the time trial, also solid in stage number 3. He was able to go on the second category climb on that stage from the last man in the peloton to the very first man throughout the climb. So that is a very impressive climbing. So I think Andy Schleck, no panic yet for Andy Schleck. He still has some time to get ready for the Tour de France.
Another big surprise really to me, Bob. In fact, one man missing from 4th place in the overall standings at the start of the day, Sylvain Chavanel, who rode a phenomenal individual time trial. Maybe one or two of these guys are actually paying for the toughness of that time trial yesterday.
Well, yes, that would be understandable. Long time trial, 53 kilometers, 33 miles, flat-out effort. It was Sylvain Chavanel that had the fastest first split, and he continued to lose a little bit of time to the stage winner, Bradley Wiggins, before the finish. But that you're going to pay for in the days to come when you go out so hard and you still do a good time trial like Sylvain Chavanel did yesterday.
Ouch, it's starting to hurt right now, and it's going to hurt a lot more over the next 2 days. I didn't like that view at the end of the valley, Bob, because, you know, there's no way out. You know you've got to climb over the top of some of the biggest mountains in eastern France. Yes, Richie Port is doing a phenomenal job here, and he's being asked to really try and ride an individual time trial. Just a little bit further back, 3rd place is Michael Rogers. Wiggins sitting there, comfortable as you like. There's Tony Martin just popping in there as well. You know, Tony Martin a couple of years ago regarded himself as a Tour de France candidate. Will he handle the climbs this weekend?
Well, that's the question mark about Tony Martin. His pedigree in the time trials is beyond question. He's the best in the business currently. But in the high mountains, day after day, in the big climbs, he's never excelled. He's never really had the motivation to do that either. He's been content in the Tour de France, especially, to win the time trials and then take a back seat in the mountain stages. But we'll see in the next couple of days. He's there after the mountains of today's stage, and presumably he'll get to the finish line with the Wiggins group. Only 18 kilometers left to go. But in the big mountains, the next couple of days to come, they will be very telling whether or not Tony Martin can remain in 2nd place in the overall standings, or perhaps challenge Bradley Wiggins, or will Tony Martin plummet out of the leaders board, out of the overall standings?
Well, this is quite an interesting situation here, Bob, because when this group went over the Col de Richemont at 88 miles covered, they were only 30 seconds in front of the main field. There'd been a massive chase. There was that little skirmish with Cadel Evans putting the attack onto Bradley Wiggins. Now, all of a sudden, they're actually starting to build on their advantage over the main field. It's back up to 1 minute and 1 second ahead of the yellow jersey group. And these 9 men seem to be working well together.
Well, maybe they heard that Luis Leon Sanchez was coming across the gap, and they doubled their efforts up again, because they might not be caught by the peloton. Now the gap continuing to increase inside the final 10 miles of bike racing. That's a good sign for the peloton. If you look at the names in that breakaway, none of them are real danger in the overall standings to Bradley Wiggins at this point in the bike race, because Bradley was so dominant in the time trial. Huge time gaps now between the whole peloton and Bradley Wiggins. A pretty handy lead over 2nd place, 38 seconds to Tony Martin.
Well, looking back here at the group of Sanchez, group number 2, you can see there, and that's Sanchez in the orange jersey. He's put the cat amongst the pigeons here because seriously, he's trying to move himself up in the overall standings today. Magnificent bridge that we're looking at here. That's the time split. 37 seconds is the group Sanchez behind the leaders, and it's 1 minute and 3 seconds back to the main field. And if you can just see that yellow car there, Bob, by the way, in second position, I think we have to have a hats off for the Mavic. They have been supporting professional cycling for 40 years. They do the neutral service in most of the big races around Europe, and they've just signed a brand new contract with the Tour de France to continue sponsoring the neutral service department there up until 2017.
And the sponsor for wheels and components of a number of the top teams in the world. Mavic, their corporate headquarters are just nearby.
Yeah, we started from the factory gates just this morning. Now, second position there, that's Chris Froome, the British rider born in Nairobi in Kenya. Behind him, Michael Rogers. Bob, they are doing a sterling job. They've got this group stretched out into a very, very long line. But the gap, and I'm a bit amazed here, because the gap to the leading group, who escaped very early on, is extending.
And maybe more importantly for the men in the breakaway, the gap to this group that has Thiago Machado there, just going through your screen, and Luis Leon Sanchez, that continues to increase again. They came within 20 seconds of the 9 leaders, but now they're starting to be distanced. The men in the front, if they work together, presumably they could hold off the charge of an equally sized group. And it remains to be seen whether or not the Sky team wants to collect everybody chasing to the finish line.
Well, this looks like Biel Kadri. He was in the breakaway early on in the day. He got dropped off. He got himself some points on the first climb of the day, the Côte de Collier. He was looking to try and get his lead back in the King of the Mountains classification. Well, that actually hasn't happened, has it?
Well, Jose Sarmiento went over the HC first. HC Beyond category climbs contain the most points. The riders that dominate the HC climbs usually win the King of the Mountain jersey in the big stage races in professional cycling. A little bit of disorganization now in the second group on the road. Maybe they see the peloton charging down, and they're like, hey, guys, let's just pull the pin on this one. We can't catch the leaders. We can't spend the rest of the day in no man's land. Why not just wait for the peloton? It looks like they're sitting up right now.
You know, Biel Kadri is trying to get across the gap while the rest of that group, I think, are about to get caught. We'll take a break. But here is all eyes down for the kickoff for what is going to be a very dramatic run down towards the finish. 13.5 kilometers to go with the leaders, Tête de la Course, the front end of the race, 1 minute and 2 seconds. And I have a feeling, Bob, that little group behind is now being picked up by the Team Sky train.
You know what used to kill me is a climb that's not on the profile. The rider's climbing here right now. And in the last 13 Ks, after a long, hard day in the saddle, you get to a climb you don't even see on the profile. And ow, that stings. Sky chasing hard, but the breakaway still holding strong. This is Biel Kadri in no man's land, but behind the 9 leaders and in front of the peloton. We don't have a time gap on Biel Kadri, but to try to get across there when they're increasing their advantage, 1 man against 9 almost never works out.
It's a very, very difficult thing to do, and I'm surprised that he's actually trying to ride across the gap. But I'm trying to look into the eyes there of Bradley Wiggins, hidden behind those sunglasses. I wonder what he's thinking. I'll tell you what, Tony Martin looked as if he'd had a hard day on the bike.
He looked a little bit cross-eyed there for a moment. That can be excused. A very tough day in the saddle for all the bike racers. Big mountains for the first time of the season, racing for most of the athletes in the professional peloton that haven't done the Giro d'Italia. So this is a very tough week of racing, and today, the first day in the big mountains, is always a test to the men that want to be competitive in the Tour de France. I'm very intrigued to see how Tony Martin's going to do in the next couple of days. If he can hang tough, finish second, or maybe even beat Bradley Wiggins, well, he'll be a big contender for the Tour de France this July.
Well, it's a special Tour de France, isn't it, this year, this July, Bob, because there's a lot more time trialing than normal. Look at these beautiful gorges down here. This is absolutely fantastic. We can't actually, by the way, just follow through there with the helicopters. It's a little bit difficult to keep up the coverage, so we'll take you on an aerial tour of the outskirts of the Jura. We're actually moving away from the Jura Mountains now, heading in towards the Alps. There's no easy way in or out. This group have got themselves organized once again. The front end of the bike race, 9 riders working together, nice and cleverly together. I have to say, the young Colombian rider on the right-hand side, Sarmiento, Bob, I think he's going to be a great star in the Vuelta a España to the end of the season.
Well, a lot of good Colombians now, great bike racers coming out of Colombia. In the 80s, they were some of the very best climbers in the sport of cycling, and now a new generation of Colombians, including Rigoberto Urán and Sebastian Jose Henao is also a teammate on Sky of Urán. Great Colombians up and coming in the sport today.
Interesting to note, Nissan Radio Shack coming up there, Bob, because I think they may well feel that their man Tony Galopin's got a crack at the finish here this afternoon. He's leading the points classification with the most points so far, so he he will want to try and get his team to pull this group back. He's got a very good sprint, but they're having a hard time. These guys are really giving it everything. They're still extending their advantage. We're at 11.9 kilometers to go. That's about 7 miles of racing and 1 minute and 8 seconds. These boys are on with a chance of creating the surprise today.
They're going flat out here. Losada on the front for the Katusha squad. He's followed by Egoy Martinez. Remy Di Gregorio is the man in red from the Cofidis squad. They're working well together this close to the finish line, and that gives them a much better chance to win the stage, especially after such a long breakaway throughout the proceedings of the day.
You know, a lot of riders chose to ride the Criterium du Dauphiné this year, Bob, for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons was yesterday the time trial was almost exactly the same distance as the final time trial in the Tour de France on stage 19, but also this stage is almost a carbon copy of stage 10. That's why I think people who are seriously thinking of winning the Tour de France this year have opted to come to this race instead of the Tour of Switzerland.
Well, in the Tour de France, knowledge is power, and seeing what to expect and actually racing over that. You could ride these roads in training 1,000,000 times and never have a similar sensation that you would have during the Tour de France. So it's great to be able to go out there and race on them as well. That's why most of our top contenders from the Tour are in the Dauphiné.
Well, let's have a look at the time split here. It's 42 seconds to Biel Kadri. In fact, he's going backwards away from that group of 9 riders. A 1:03 back to the main field. I think they've got it locked in. There's nobody really dangerous in that leading group of 9 riders to the overall lead, Bradley Wiggins, who opened up massive time gaps yesterday. But certainly Biel Kadri, I think he will get caught before the end of the race by the main field. The question mark is, Bob, will the 9-man group survive?
The 9 men in front still hanging on to a minute lead. 10 kilometers, or just over 10 kilometers, about 7 miles left in the bike race. Flat stage for the sprinters, it would be a no-brainer, and there's Biel Kadri getting caught. They would come back in with just over a minute of advantage with 11 kilometers to go. But on a stage like today, totally different story. We're in the mountains, and what happens is the GC battle comes into a part of the stage win. And if the riders are not a threat that are in the breakaway, oftentimes the race leader will do just as much energy as is required to maintain the race lead. So they have a very good chance to stay away on today's stage.
Well, the race situation here, Bob, is basically Team Sky don't need to catch that breakaway anymore. They're not concerned. There's nobody in there that's dangerous, and they're now looking to another team, a Radio Shack Nissan, to do the pacemaking. But one man chasing on his own is not going to catch 9 men.
No, he will most certainly be very hard pressed to catch 9 in front. Eddie Merckx, perhaps, Bernardi, no, Greg LeMond, Lance Armstrong, capable. But most professionals, let's face it, that's never going to happen.
Well, you never know. There's stranger things have happened. We're now just approaching 10 kilometers to go, 6.5 miles of racing. Again, this is Daniel Navarro, a very good climber from Spain, and Team Saxo Bank looking over his shoulder. They keep whipping up the pacemaking, and every time they do this, you see how hard these guys are trying. You know, it was very difficult for the breakaway to establish itself in the early few kilometers, because I think every team manager, Bob, had said, you will be in the breakaway this afternoon. 10 kilometers to go officially for the 9 leaders. Yeah, the question mark is, will the 9 leaders survive over this last 6 miles of racing as they head down into the small town of Rumilly? Welcome back to the Epic Cycle Series presented by Michelob Ultra. We're on a run down towards the finish now at just inside of 7 kilometers to go, 4 miles of racing, and all of a sudden Daniel Navarro, who has won a stage with the Dauphiné before, Bob, has made the move in the pale blue jersey.
Well, you can throw the cooperation part of the breakaway out the window, the aggressive part now, the attacking part of the breakaway. That's the hallmark of people capable of winning stage. That is in the full picture right now. One thing about this breakaway, not a lot of closers in this break. A lot of guys, very strong professionals and great domestiques.
Wait a minute. Somebody's going clear there. It looks like there's a white jersey. It could be a rider from the Française de Jeu, Arthur Vichot, but there's Remy de Gregorio's making the move behind in the red jersey to try and pull him back.
Remy Di Gregorio trying to pull back Arthur Vichot in the gutter there. Perhaps some crosswinds blowing also. Igor Martinez, the man in orange, he's always in the breaks, but very rarely wins a race. He's got a stage win in the Vuelta, though. This is anybody's ball game if the riders in the breakaway don't get caught.
Well, you know, this man, Vichot, won a couple of races last year, the Boucle of the southern part of the Ardèche and the Tour de Doubs. His uncle, in fact, won a stage in the Tour de France, Frédéric Vichot. He was a very good downhill race. In fact, one of the stages he won was down a very dramatic descent in the stage of the Tour de France. Vichot looks back. It's probably a good move, Bob, to try and get clear, because, you know, when I've looked through the list of these 9 riders, none of them are great winners, so none of them have actually got a very good sprint, so the best way to try and win is to win alone. Well,
a good indication of Arthur Vichot's abilities is he hasn't looked back yet. He's just doing the work. He's got a little tiny bit of a gap, and he is going to the finish line. He has to cut the tether to the chasers to have a chance to win the stage. For the chasers just behind, they have to start cooperating. There's 8 against 1. Presumably, they can catch the breakaway. If they work together, that's the question.
Yeah, but look at the gap. You know, it's down to 45 seconds on the main field. So the main field is also now starting to close in. They will start to see that group. There's no cohesion in that group there of riders. They're now down to 7 men. It's De Gregario's dropped back into 3rd position. If they want to pull this man back now, Bob, they really need to get themselves organised, and he's going to have to try and hold off the main field, who are not very far behind. 45 seconds is approximately 3/4 of a kilometre.
Quick look over his shoulder for Vichot. He saw that the gap was increasing and redoubled his efforts, really hammering on the pedals. Now, if you're Remy Di Gregorio, the conundrum is if you chase down Vichot, you're towing 7 guys with you. You're giving them the advantage, and you do not want to do that. You want them to cooperate, but if they're unwilling or unable, the advantage goes over to the lone leader, Arthur Vichot. Peloton now, they have regrouped after all the climbing, and the teams will look around. Who do we have that's fast? Who do we have with the remaining people in the front group that can win the stage? And they will work for that rider and try to catch the breakaway.
Well, looking down the line of riders, they're still trying to get themselves organised in the peloton here this afternoon. It has been a very grippy day. The first rider there in the dark green jersey was Thomas Vogler. He's been very aggressive, and I think we'll see him ride well over the weekend. This group is absolutely falling apart here now, Bob. That's Egoy Martinez in the orange jersey, just scuttling across in 3rd position. De Gregorio, after his long effort, is having to plough his way back to the group. I'm just trying to look up to underneath the screen there to see whether or not Vichot is opening the gap on everybody else.
If we go forward, we will find Vichot by himself. Perfect place to be for Arthur Vichot. Doesn't have to worry about whether or not he's doing too much work with anybody that's with him because he's by himself. That's a luxury, and when you have that, you got to give everything you have to the finish line.
Well, this is where you have to turn your body inside out. Bury yourself when you've got this chance, because if he gets caught, he's completely out of this now, Bob, and it's important for this guy. What's interesting, I think, so far about this Criterium de Dauphine, there's a lot of young blood coming through. This guy's just 23 years of age. A lot of youngsters, and a lot of French youngsters coming to the top of the sport.
Also for Arthur Vichot, no confusion about what is going on tactically because he's by himself, and we'll have to see if they can organize behind. But look, now we have group of 2 guys right here, and presumably followed by the other men that were just in the break. The cat is amongst the pigeons, as they say.
Well, that's Dmitry Fofanov was the rider with the Astana turquoise jersey, trying to come across the gap even from the dizzy heights of the helicopter. Now all of a sudden, different formation at the front end of the main field. This is Europe car thinking about the victory. Their victory could very easily go to Thomas Vogler. He can pack a good sprint sometimes. Bradley Wiggins just marching out, taking time, waiting for this stage to get over and done with, because he knows he's getting ready for a very tough weekend. I'll tell you what, it's up to 51 seconds now, so Arthur Vichot is putting a good ride in, but the question is, what are the guys behind him doing? And you're right, Bob, he's riding very sensibly. He's hardly ever looked back to judge the distance between himself and the other riders. That banner is going to tell him 3 kilometers, 1.8 miles to go to the finish.
Inside of 2 miles, the peloton chasing hard. Europe car now has come to the front. Can they close just about 1 minute gap on the lone leader to give Vogler a chance to win the stage? Europe car missed out on the breakaway. That will sting. Vogler 79th in the time trial, so one wonders if he was soft pedaling through that, not worried about his overall standings. If that's the case, he'll want to have a stage win, salvage something from the Dauphiné, and give himself some morale going into the Tour de France.
Well, I'll tell you what, this is not at all like the finish of tomorrow's stage. Tomorrow's stage, with about 15 kilometers to go, you go over the summit of a very famous Tour de France climb called le Jouplan, and then you plunge down a daredevil descent into the finish line. Here, it's pan flat, completely different. It's ticking off a kilometer here, Bob, at around about 1 minute and 15 seconds. Their chasers are 20 seconds behind him. Those are the survivors, that early morning breakaway, and he's got the main field pegged at 52 seconds.
Well, forget about the main field. 1 minute almost, 52 seconds, and that gap just went up by 1 second. Worry about the poursuivants, the chasers that are only 20 seconds behind.
Well, he's concentrated, this young man. Look at that. You can almost read the pain in that face of his as he's rocking on the front end of his seat. That will be a sight for his sore eyes. 2 kilometers to go. He's counting these by one, 1.2 miles of racing. When he sees the Flamme Rouge, the red kite, Bob, of the last kilometer, he's going to breathe a very big sigh of relief, because I reckon he will have got this in the bag.
Just over a mile to go for Arthur Vichot. He must have sensed in the breakaway that riders were starting to weaken. He took the perfect moment, the just exact right moment to attack. The other riders looked at each other, the other men that were with him. They hesitated for a moment, and that was all that Arthur Vichot needed. He just has just over a mile now before glory. What it would be a great stage win for the FDJ man.
Well, I have to say, Marc Madiot knows how to pick his riders, because this young guy turned professional at 21 years of age with the Française des Jeux, and that first year as a professional bike rider, Bobby won a stage of Paris-Corrèze. He won that in the sprint, but this is a completely different way. He's going out for the lone victory. This is the best way to win a bike race, isn't it? All said and done, on your own if you can.
Great news for the man in front, Arthur Vichot. The gap to the chasers just has gone up by 4 seconds, just almost at the 1K banner, 1,000 yards plus to go. And inside the final mile of bike racing, just a couple of minutes left between Arthur Vichot and what will be an incredible stage win.
Well, you know, Bob, it's just at this point now when you're starting to sense that you can win, that pain will dissipate for a little while. You'll be in an area, you'll be in a bit of excitement. We can see now there's the Flamme Rouge at 1,000 meters to go. This young kid, he'll look back to make sure that he's not going to get caught in the last moment, and he will continue his effort right the way up to the line, and then we'll see that great big 2-armed salute.
Another thing that's a relief is a slight downhill. Falls flat in the positive direction for Arthur Vichot, streaking to the finish line. Just about 800 meters, half a mile to go before the finish. Great riding by Arthur Vichot. Clever to get away from a breakaway, but also very powerful riding as well. Deep in the pain cave here. Pin it to suffering and just keep it right there to the finish line.
Well, you know, some teams have had a hard time getting a tally of victories at all this year, but that's not the case for FDJ, because they will be knocking up their 10th victory of the season so far with a 23-year-old. That's the magical thing, I think, about this, Bob. It's the youngster getting a chance of glory in a great big race like the Criterium du Dauphine.
Well, this might give him a qualifying ride in the Tour de France for the first time in his career. Arthur Vichot looking around, giving a fist pump there to the motorbike. He is set for a stage win. He's looking behind, doesn't see any riders behind him. Great ride by Arthur Vichot.
Well, he looks back, very serious professional now. He knows the moment is about nigh that he's going to get that victory. He just wants to make sure that nobody's coming up at the last minute. Yes, we know you've got this win on the bag. I know it hurts. I know you really want to get the victory here this afternoon. And he looks back again. He's not sure that he's going to get this, but there's the moment, Bob, when he knows that he's got the victory finally. The 2-armed salute pointing to the team. Thank you very much. That was a good time, I think, Bob. A well-timed attack there, and they almost got to his back wheel, but somehow the elastic snapped. You can hear the crowd shouting. They're going crazy for this young kid. I think we'll talk a little bit more about him. This is the 4th win of his career, and that gap actually seriously did open. I wonder if the other guys are going to survive.
Oh, the others might get caught. As they say in Belgium, no one else in the photograph when you win a race. That is the best way to do it. Arthur Vichot very pleased with himself. He should be. This is the biggest win of his professional career.
Well, this is Fofanoff and Egoy Martinez over on the right-hand side. These guys have survived. They're sprinting for second place as they come up to the line. Martinez gets second, Fofanoff third, and De Gregorio in 4th place. What now is the gap going to be back to the main field? I don't think there's going to be any change in the overall standings. They were just coming around the corner there, so they were around about the 50-second deficit. And as we look down to the finish, this is Maxime Bouet who's coming across the line there. He's going to get himself a good place inside of the top 10. And the reason for that is because he's a local boy. There's the peloton now charging up to the line. And watch for Tony Gallopin on the left-hand side in the dark lime green jersey. He's trying to get himself some more points to extend his lead in the best sprinter in the race so far. Very easy win for him, Tony Gallopin, crossing the line, heading a few more points. There's the yellow jersey. There will be no change now, Bob, tonight in the overall standings.
Yellow jersey tucked safely in there. Some dangerous moments after the climbs. Team Sky looked to be a little bit out of control, a little bit of out of sorts, chasing the breakaway, but they got it back together, and they delivered Bradley Wiggins safely to the finish line.
Well, look at that face. That's the face of a man who has enjoyed his victory here this afternoon. So let's have a quick look at the stage results. Confirmation, Arthur Vichot, 26 seconds was his gap over Martinez, Fofanoff and De Gregorio, with Jose Sarmiento, the Colombian rider on Team Liquigas Cannondale, getting himself into the top 5. A little bit further down, Daniel Navarro in 7th place, and Maxime Bouet in 9th place, and 10th place going to Bruno Pires of Team Saxo Bank. But it all belongs to this man here this afternoon. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll have the podiums. Well, Bob, the Jura didn't have much to say at the top end of the overall classification, but one man will remember his ride through the Jura Mountains this afternoon, Arthur Vichot.
Arthur Vichot stepping onto the top step of the podium for the stage presentation. This is his biggest win as a professional, coming at a great time in the season, just before the Tour de France. He should be able to be selected for his French team, FDJ.
Yep, he will certainly like to try and get into that team for the Tour de France in the month of July. It's always difficult this month leading up to the Tour de France. There's so much speculation and innuendo about who's going to make what cut and who will be there. But today, the Road ID Ride of the Day goes to this young man who won.
This is a great attack. You see the riders not cooperating 100%. Arthur Vichot, Danny Navarro on his wheel. Navarro looks back, hesitates for a moment, and that's all that Vichot needed to go all the way to the finish line. Great solo victory.
Yep, 23 years of age, this young man, getting himself the Road ID Ride of the Day here this afternoon. But, Bob, I'll tell you one thing. One man who did look like, at the back there, red, white and blue, champion of France, started the day in 4th place overall. Sylvain Chavanel's lost himself nearly more than 9 minutes.
9+ minutes to the leader and about 8+ minutes to the Bradley Wiggins group. For Sylvain Chavanel, you can forget about his overall hopes. He did a great time trial yesterday. He started the stage 4th overall. He's going to plummet way down the overall standings.
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised about that, but maybe there's something that he knows that we don't. But there's no change in the yellow jersey, because that's still firmly now, I have to say, on the shoulders of Bradley Wiggins, looking to win this race for the 2nd year in a row.
He might do 2 more stages in the mountains between Bradley Wiggins and another title of the Dauphine, put under pressure by Cadel Evans and BMC. A lot of fight left in Cadel Evans for the next 2 stages, but Bradley Wiggins finally, Team Sky brought it back together, got the peloton in good order, and were able to come to the finish town with Bradley Wiggins safe in the yellow jersey. Yeah, but this man's not safe anywhere, is he? Look, just coming across the line there. That is the group containing Andy Schleck, and that's 14 minutes. He's just going through there. 14 minutes lost by Andy Schleck. Is he going to be ready for the Tour, Bob? Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater just yet. It is getting quite tepid, though, in the Radio Shack camp. If you're Andy Schleck, you got to worry a little bit. He's lost time on every single stage throughout this bike race. Not a great portent for the Tour de France so far. Well, let's have a look at the overall standings as we go into a very alpine weekend. Wiggins leads by 38 seconds from Tony Martin. A minute 20, his own teammate Michael Rogers. Cadel Evans now up into 4th place. Wilco Kelderman, the best young rider, in there as well. Chris Froome in 6th, a little bit further down. Jürgen van den Broek in 8th place, and Jerome Coppel in 10th. But the gaps are big, 2:55 down to the man in 10th. 13th in the standings, TJ Van Gardner in just over 3 minutes. Andy Schleck, 29 minutes and 8 seconds behind. Let's be honest, that is pitiful. You got to be able to climb better than that if you want to win the Tour de France. You've got to try. Anyway, don't forget the Epic Cycle Series presented by Michelob Ultra continues with stage 6 of the Criterium du Dauphiné tomorrow, 11:30 p.m. Eastern Time here on the NBC Sports Network. And don't miss the hockey Stanley Cup Final, Game 5 in the Garden State tomorrow. Kings versus the Devils, 8 p.m. on NBC. Log on to the website too for all of our cycling information. Until tomorrow, for an exciting weekend of sport, I'm Paul Sherwin for Bob Roll saying goodbye.